This is the Mop-Up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. In an interview published in today's New York Times, Donald Trump talked about this week's attack on Venezuela. He was asked, what checks does the government have on your foreign policy? What does the legislative branch, what does the Supreme Court, what kind of checks do they have on your decisions to invade sovereign nations? Trump said, yeah, there is one thing, my own morality, my own mind. It's the one thing that can stop me, unquote. The only thing that can stop Trump is his own morality, which means there's nothing to stop him. Trump said, I don't need to obey international law. He said, I don't need international law, adding the post-World War II world order places unnecessary burdens on America, which he called the world's only superpower. During the interview with the New York Times, Trump took a call from Gustavo Petro, the president of Colombia, who Trump has warned is going to be next, right after Maduro, or maybe after Cuba, or maybe in between Cuba and Greenland. He hasn't decided yet. Trump told the New York Times that he's still considering invoking the Insurrection Act and that a president only has to obey the Supreme Court in certain instances. Border Patrol agents in Portland, Oregon, shot two suspected gang members Thursday night. This was during a traffic stop. One of the alleged gang members, was shot in the chest, but the Associated Press now saying it's unable to corroborate whether they were, in fact, gang members. The Department of Homeland Security said the border agents opened fire. You know the drill. After the suspects tried to kill the border agents with their vehicle. As of early Friday morning, both are reportedly still alive. This is the Mop-Up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for joining me. Please hit the like button so I remain in your feed. If you're having trouble finding this show, and I know you are, I don't want to get into it. There's a reason you're having trouble finding me. And subscribe to my newsletter in this channel. Here's the latest on that ICE agent's deadly shooting of an unarmed 37-year-old mother of three in Minneapolis early Wednesday morning. 100 more federal agents have been sent to Minneapolis since the shooting. This after the FBI declared that the state of Minnesota will not participate in the investigation of the killing. The agent who shot Good has been identified as Jonathan Ross. He's described by the New York Times as a 10-year veteran of ICE. The Times also reporting that court records show Ross was injured last year in Minnesota after he tried to apprehend Roberto Carlos Munoz, a Guatemalan man convicted of sexual abuse in the state of Minnesota. Ross, he's the alleged shooter. He reportedly pulled Munoz over, ordered him to lower his window. When Munoz refused, Ross reportedly pulled out his taser, shattered the window, reached into the car to unlock it, and then got dragged 100 feet as Munoz attempted to drive off. Ross, this is the guy who is the alleged shooter of Ms. Good, the murder victim. Ross was then taken to the hospital, treated, required 20 stitches. That's all according to Nicholas Burrows, who's an investigative reporter from the New York Times. Burrows reports that Munoz, this was the Guatemalan who allegedly dragged Ross, the ICE agent, 100 feet. Burrows from the Times reports that Munoz called 911 to report he himself had been injured after he was attacked by an ICE agent. That would be Jonathan Ross, the alleged ICE agent who shot Ms. Good. According to reporting in the New York Times, Munoz, that's the Guatemalan immigrant, he went on trial last month. He was charged with assaulting a federal agent, that would be Jonathan Ross. He was charged with assaulting a federal agent with a deadly weapon, which would be his car, and he was found guilty. Ross, the ICE agent believed to be the shooter in Wednesday's killing of Renee Good, testified last month in that trial and he told jurors that he feared for his own life while Muniz sped off with Ross's arm still reaching through the window. So, did Ross fear for his life Wednesday morning when he allegedly fired 3, possibly 4 shots into Renee Nicole Good? All video shown. I'm not going to show you any of the video. I'm going to show you pictures from the videos, so all video, and you've seen it, all video shown on the internet shows that Good is driving her Honda Pilot away from Ross, whoever is the ICE agent who did the shooting. He fired 2 shots through her side windshield. Okay, this is very important. Look at this picture. Whoever did the shooting fired 2 shots through her side windshield, suggesting he was able to step out of the way after first firing at her head on through the windshield. He fired at her head on through the windshield. So let me just show you, because they're disputing this already, but that is the car, okay? That is the Honda SUV being driven by Ms. Good, okay? That's the car. She's in the passenger seat. That is the shooter. We think it's Jonathan Ross, ICE agent Jonathan Ross, 10-year veteran, and this is where he fired 2 shots into her side window. These were the last shots he fired as she veered to the right to drive off, and one of those 2 shots was the kill shot. So, was he in harm's way when he fired those 2 shots? No ballistic report or autopsy has been made public. We don't know if we're ever going to see the ballistics report. Most of the recent accounts from reliable sources indicate 3 bullets going through Good's car. The first through her front windshield, that would be shot 1. So that suggests the agent was a little to the side of her car as it began to veer right and away from him. And then the 2 shots through the passenger side window tell us he had absolutely no reason to believe this car was heading into him, yet he fired 2 shots in rapid succession, one of them the kill shot, as she drove away and to the right of him. You see, she's veering to the right. Was this car weaponized? Was she driving it away from the ICE agent or towards the ICE agent? Okay? Clearly, she was not weaponizing her car. Clearly, she was driving away from the ICE agent. And because the video evidence is overwhelming, a new narrative has emerged that the ICE agent, who is believed to be Jonathan Ross, he was well within his right to fire at a suspect fleeing an arrest. This is what we are hearing from the right wing. They are saying, if an ICE agent orders you to stop, you have to stop. And if you drive off, they say the ICE agent has every right to fire their weapon at you. That is not what the law says, and that is not what the Supreme Court ruled in 1985. I'm going to go over the details because it's important. They are changing their arguments, the right to get their arms around this. But here's the headline, okay? Know this for a fact. The police here in the United States, federal, local, they can only discharge their weapons and fire at a suspect who is fleeing a violent crime and is deemed a physical danger to the community because they are armed and dangerous. Was Ms. Good armed and dangerous? Was she a threat to the community? So this is why you hear a constant refrain from ICE throughout all of last year. And in Portland on Thursday, Border Patrol officers shot 2 alleged gang members because they had weaponized their car. That's what we always hear. Whenever ICE agents or Border Patrol agents fire their guns, it's always because somebody weaponized their car. Now, you saw the videos. Had Good weaponized her vehicle? Was she driving it into this ICE agent with the intent to kill him? Did she pose a threat to the rest of the community? Was there any evidence that if she got away, she planned to drive her Honda into pedestrians in order to kill them? That's her in the driver's seat, veering right. That's her car. That's the officer believed to be Jonathan Ross. And there's his gun firing 2 shots in rapid succession, one of them supposedly the kill shot. Was she fleeing the scene of a violent crime? Because if you're fleeing the scene of a violent crime, then police officers can discharge their weapons. But if it's not a violent crime, they cannot fire at you. That's the law, okay? Now, you can support ICE. You can support Trump. You can even be a fascist who believes people who disobey an ICE agent's order deserve to be killed. And people are saying that. You're free to have your beliefs, but there are facts and there is the law. The facts are, based on all evidence from cell phone videos, Good was driving away from that ICE agent. She was veering away from the ICE agent who shot her, which is why the last 2 bullet holes were through the passenger side window. They weren't through her front windshield. They were through her passenger side window, which meant she was veering to her right away from the ICE agents when he fired. This is why the last 2 bullet holes were through the passenger side window and not the front window. This is why the ICE agent who shot her was able to run down the block after Good crashed her car into a parked vehicle. See, the ICE agent was able to chase after the car. Does that sound like he was injured? So here is the law. She was not fleeing the scene of a violent crime. Okay? That is Ross, the alleged shooter, who ran down to where she crashed the car. He was able to run down there. So she may have been fleeing, but she wasn't fleeing the scene of a violent crime. She may not even have been fleeing the scene of any crime. She seems to be disobeying some of the video. She seems to be disobeying an ICE agent's order to get out of the car. Now, she was an American citizen. ICE had no right to detain her, even if she was impeding their ability to conduct their job. That's subject to debate, how much you can impede. You're not allowed to touch an ICE officer. You're not allowed to get in their way. Disobeying an order from an ICE agent or fleeing an ICE agent is not a violent crime. The law says the ICE agents just needed to write down her license number, allow her to drive home to her 3 children, and if she had in fact committed a crime, track her down later that day. By shooting her, she crashed into a parked car. That created more of a threat to the community. Now, you may enjoy the bloodlust of seeing a young woman shot to death by law enforcement. There are a lot of Americans who want to see a white woman married to another woman shot to death by an ICE agent. I know this country. Trust me, plenty of Trump supporters are not so secretly glad she was killed. Okay, I can't change people's pathology. I can't change how people feel. But the law and the truth are immutable. Whoever fired that weapon at her committed a crime and belongs in prison. Again, that's not a matter of opinion. That is the law. In 1985, the Supreme Court ruled in Tennessee versus Garner that police officers are forbidden from using deadly force to apprehend a suspect who is fleeing. Now, up until that ruling, Tennessee police were allowed to use their weapons to stop someone running from the scene of a crime, violent or nonviolent, property crime. According to Tennessee law, police could use their weapon to stop someone fleeing from any kind of crime. According to the statute, in effect until the Supreme Court overturned it in 1985, this was the law before the Supreme Court overturned it, if after a police officer announces their intention to make an arrest and the suspect then tries to escape, the officer would be in their right to use whatever force is necessary, including a deadly bullet, to prevent that escape. That law was based on British common law going back centuries, when law enforcement, such as they were back then, law enforcement only had access to primitive weapons. They write about this. Byron White wrote the majority opinion, and he said, we're talking about different types of weapons now. He said, back then, when this law was written, law enforcement had primitive weapons that were more likely to miss their intended target or leave a flesh wound rather than kill somebody. In his majority decision, Justice Byron White wrote that the precision and deadliness of modern weapons necessitates law enforcement officers to refrain from firing their weapons because the death of a fleeing suspect is far more grievous than whatever crime that suspect is wanted for, unless it's a violent crime. The court ruled, this is the law. Now, you may not like this law, and you may think that this woman deserved to be shot, but the court ruled that if a suspect is fleeing a nonviolent crime where the arresting officer doesn't believe the suspect is a physical threat to the community, that officer is forbidden from firing their weapon. In other words, if a fleeing suspect is about to be arrested for a property crime as opposed to a violent crime, shots cannot be fired. Justice Byron White, in his majority opinion, wrote in 1985, quote, "It's not better that all felony suspects die than that they escape." In Tennessee versus Garner, the Supreme Court established what is called the Garner standard. Law enforcement officers, including that ICE agent who shot Ms. Good, law enforcement officers must consider two questions before firing their weapon at a suspect who is fleeing from the scene of a crime. One, is the suspect aiming or holding a weapon that poses a threat to the officer or anyone in the immediate area? Two, is the suspect believed to have just committed a violent crime? Otherwise, officers are forbidden from discharging their weapons. This 1985 ruling stems from a 1974 incident where a Tennessee police officer responded to a call reporting a home burglary. Police officer Elton Hyman and his partner arrived on the scene. They spotted 15-year-old Edward Garner running out of the house towards a 6-foot chain link fence that 15-year-old Garner was planning to climb over and escape with what later turned out to be a purse containing $10. So apparently he stole $10, a purse with $10 in it, from that house. He was 15 years old. Officer Hyman ordered 15-year-old Edward Garner, who was all of 5'4" and about 100 pounds, he ordered him to stop or I'll shoot. Garner, 15-year-old Garner, continued to climb the fence, and Officer Hyman, using his .38 caliber revolver, fired one hollow-tip bullet to the back of Garner's head. Garner was taken to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. Garner's father sued the city of Memphis, its police department, as well as Elton Hyman, the officer who fired the deadly shot. Lawyers for Hyman, the officer who fired the deadly shot, lawyers for the city of Memphis, lawyers for the Memphis Police Department, argued in the lower courts that Hyman, the officer, was well within his rights to fire at 15-year-old Garner thanks to this Tennessee statute that permits an arresting officer to use deadly force if, after announcing his intention to make an arrest, the suspect attempts to flee. That was the statute. So he wasn't, the cop wasn't breaking any law. That lawsuit kicked around the lower courts for 11 years. It finally made its way to the Supreme Court, with the core issue being the constitutionality of Tennessee's use of deadly force statute, stating an officer may use, quote, all the necessary means to effect, an officer may use, quote, all the necessary means to effect an arrest, unquote. All the necessary means to effect an arrest, even if that means killing the suspect. Now, that Tennessee statute was on the books in about, I don't know the exact number, but let's say about 22 other states. Again, lawyers for this officer argued Tennessee law permitted him to fire at a fleeing suspect, even though the 15-year-old Garner was unarmed and was not suspected of committing any violent crime and posed no physical threat to the officer or the community. So, if this kid had gotten away, was there the possibility he might have committed more home robberies? Maybe. But was there ever the possibility that he was going to commit violent crimes? And that answer is no. In our law, there is a distinction that is made between property crime and violent crime. Rich people rarely get convicted for property crime. The prosecutors always agree it's a misunderstanding, or why ruin someone's life over some minor indiscretion? That's if you're rich. But if the suspect is a person of color or poor and is found guilty of a property, the prosecutors will prosecute property crime if you're a person of color or you're not rich. And it will carry a prison sentence in order to keep our multi-billion-dollar prison, for-profit prison industrial complex humming. The Supreme Court in 1985, I'm having trouble talking. This took a long time to prepare, and I've had no sleep. The Supreme Court in 1985 ruled that police officers cannot kill someone fleeing the scene of a non-violent crime. The court also ruled that shooting an unarmed suspect fleeing the scene of a non-violent crime violates that suspect's Fourth Amendment rights. Fourth Amendment forbids the police from conducting illegal search and seizures. Okay, so the officer, it's a little complicated, but it makes sense if you think about it. In terms of the Fourth Amendment, the officer who fired the shot that killed 15-year-old Garner, he's not a judge. He's not a juror. He only suspected the 15-year-old of committing a home burglary because he was fleeing the scene of a home burglary. But it was all circumstantial evidence that must be what? Adjudicated in a court of law to determine whether 15-year-old Garner was in fact guilty. An officer, as you all know, cannot serve as judge, jury, and executioner. That's where the Fourth Amendment comes in. This 15-year-old Garner's Fourth Amendment rights were violated, along with other civil rights, because that deadly shot to the back of his head prevented him from being able to defend himself in a court of law and present evidence to defend himself. So it was a form of illegal search and seizure. By killing him, the officer destroyed the evidence. A police officer is not allowed to shoot someone just because that officer or ICE agent has reasonable suspicion that the person he's aiming his gun at is guilty. Officers can only make an arrest based on reasonable suspicion. They cannot empty their gun on reasonable suspicion unless the suspect is believed to have committed a violent crime and is pointing a weapon at either the police officer or the community. And again, that officer can only fire his weapon, her weapon, their weapon, if that officer believes the suspect is either armed or dangerous. Now, armed is okay. In other words, you can't just fire at somebody because they're armed. In the United States, it's okay to be armed. These days, practically everyone is. But was the suspect armed and dangerous? Was the suspect brandishing the weapon? If the suspect had a gun and the suspect is... Anyway, I don't want to... Okay, so in her dissenting opinion, Justice Sandra Day O'Connor joined soon-to-be Chief Justice William Rehnquist and then current Chief Justice Warren Burger. She wrote a dissenting opinion warning that the Garner decision, this was in 1985, the Garner decision created a constitutional right for unarmed suspects to flee from the scene of a nonviolent crime. So what do you think? Leave a comment. Do you want to live in a country where nonviolent criminals can try to flee the scene of a crime without officers shooting them? God forbid the police officer chase them. God forbid we have police officers who can still run. Do you want to live in a country where police officers can stop any suspect by shooting them in the back? Okay, that is the law. Tennessee v. Garner. Well, you're all familiar with Wednesday's shooting of an unarmed woman, a U.S. citizen, who was driving away from ICE agents who, what do you think? They were trying to detain her. That's what it looks like to me. The Department of Homeland Security is very much aware of this Garner standard, which is why immediately after the killing, everyone from Tricia McLaughlin, she's the Department of Homeland Security spokesperson, Kristi Noem, who runs the Department of Homeland Security, ICE answers the Department of Homeland Security, and Donald Trump. They all claimed the victim had weaponized her car and was attempting to kill the arresting officer. That's the Garner standard from 1985. Therefore, since she had weaponized her car, she posed a threat to the officer, and if he didn't fire his weapon, she posed a threat to the community. Do you believe that? Do you believe she posed a threat to the officer? Do you believe that if she had gotten away, she posed a threat to the community? She was not fleeing the scene of a violent crime, okay? We're not even certain she was fleeing the scene of any crime. ICE is making the argument she was wanted for previously interfering with ICE agents trying to carry out their arrests in Minneapolis. Now, Kristi Noem, is accusing Good of stalking ICE agents, harassing them all day, using her car to block lanes that ICE agents were attempting to drive through, and then refusing to move her car despite repeated commands to do so. That might be true. That might also be a lie. Or the truth may lie somewhere in between. That's why we have jury trials. But we can't have a jury trial because this ICE agent shot her to death. We have seen from countless reports throughout all of 2025, when Trump's mass deportation efforts began, that impeding an ICE agent is a very slippery term that can be applied to anyone or any activity. If you so much as brush up against an ICE agent, you will be charged with assaulting a federal officer. Greg Bovino, the Border Patrol commander running the ICE operations in Los Angeles, Chicago, Charlotte, he falsely accused a Broadview, Illinois protester that he had tackled to the ground. He falsely accused that protester of injuring his groin. In other words, Greg Bovino, who has been accused of being a serial liar by the federal judge in Illinois that he was reporting to last year, he violently tackled a peaceful protester in Broadview, Illinois, and because the best defense is an offense, since he knew he broke the law, he accused the person he attacked of injuring his groin. All of this was thrown out of court, including his groin, if he even has one. Bovino tossed 2 tear gas canisters at peaceful protesters in Chicago, then admitted to lying under oath to this federal judge in Illinois when he first tried to explain to the judge that the crowd had turned violent. He feared for his life, and then he tossed the tear gas. And then, as his testimony proceeded, we found out he just wanted to throw some tear gas. He lied. He lied to the judge. He claimed he got hit in the head by a rock. He didn't. He just wanted to throw tear gas at protesters. Again, impeding an ICE agent, making an ICE agent fear for their life, is whatever the ICE agent says it is, until they have to testify under oath. And then we discover these ICE agents are liars because they're inadequate men looking for any excuse to lash out at someone, especially a woman. So right now, there's a lot of body dysmorphia going on with these ICE agents. Take a look at them. These are incels. That's what's going on. So right now, ICE is covering up the murder by accusing this woman Good of being a domestic terrorist and a threat to law enforcement as well as the community. Well, I've said on the show countless times, you do not want to get arrested by ICE. Stay out of their way. I've gone over this. Do not impede them. Do not touch them. You do not want to get arrested or shot. Blowing a whistle is legal. Videotaping ICE agents is not only legal, but necessary. Can you imagine if we didn't have cell phones, what would be going on right now? Now, driving slowly on purpose in front of an unmarked ICE vehicle, well, is it legal? Yes and no. Taking your sweet time to get out of the way of an unmarked ICE van is legal so long as you're getting out of the way. Civil disobedience isn't legal. It is a nonviolent crime that will get you arrested. It is also a celebrated form of peaceful protest. Martin Luther King was one of the great practitioners of civil disobedience. Letter from a Birmingham jail is taught in our schools, at least the good ones. And by the good ones, I mean not Florida. Law enforcement is not allowed to shoot or kill anyone engaging in nonviolent civil disobedience. Now, if you think Good somehow committed a violent crime, that she committed a felony by wantonly interfering with ICE agents and endangering their lives, okay, she's entitled to her day in court. Make your argument in court. You cannot shoot her at least 3 times in the face, possibly 4 times. She was the mother of 3 in a minivan. All ICE had to do was write down her license plate. She wasn't going on the lam. She had children whose father had just died. She wasn't going anywhere. You knew where to find her. But instead, an ICE agent who apparently stepped in front of her vehicle or to the side of her vehicle, maybe to stop it from moving, he fired 3, possibly 4 shots into her face as, and there are the 3 shots, as she turned her car away from the agent and tried to drive away. Those are the facts. The inquest is now being controlled by the FBI, Kash Patel, so we don't know what other facts will ever be revealed and, more importantly, concealed. There will be civil lawsuits, but there's the issue of qualified immunity. Can an ICE agent be sued for damages caused while performing his job? Was he performing his job? Was that an official act as an ICE agent to fire your weapon at an unarmed person who was not wanted for any crime? And then there's the issue of who the victim is, Ms. Good. Was she a domestic terrorist, as Kristi Noem insists? Who knows? Which is why it's never a good idea to use deadly force, because we'll never have a trial to find out. Again, they're going over this now, and they are telling you not to believe your own eyes. That's her SUV. She's in the driver's seat. That is the ICE agent, not in harm's way, not injured. There's his gun, and he fired it. Was she driving that car into him? Had she weaponized her vehicle? She weaponized her vehicle as much as Joe Biden weaponed the Justice Department against Donald Trump. This is the Mop Up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for joining me. Leave a comment. I read all your comments. Let me know what you're thinking. Here's the latest. As of early Friday morning, on that ICE agent's deadly shooting of an American citizen in Minneapolis. This is what we know. The 37-year-old mother of 3, Renee Nicole Good, was shot to death Wednesday morning just 1 mile away from the spot where a police officer killed George Floyd in 2020. Now, you saw the video, right? The right wing, we all saw the same thing. The right wing says Chauvin was innocent. That's why I keep showing you these pictures. The right wing tries to get you to believe what your eyes aren't telling you. Video taken right after this shooting clearly shows ICE agents threatening to arrest a physician on the scene who offered to assist the dying woman. I saw the videos. Witnesses telling the Minneapolis Star that this physician said, "I can help. Is there a pulse?" And he was told by ICE agents, "Back off or we'll arrest you. Medics are arriving shortly." But new reports say blocked traffic created by federal agents slowed the arrival of those medics. They were forced to arrive by foot as bystanders kept screaming for ICE to allow that physician to attend to the woman. ICE wouldn't allow it. Both the FBI and Minnesota's Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, that's the state police department, immediately began investigations, and that created a jurisdictional dispute. State Attorney General, former Congressman Keith Ellison, he declared that he's the state attorney general for Minnesota. He declared that if the officer who fired the shots into Good's face, if that officer broke the law, quote, "I will do all that I can to ensure that officer is held accountable." But on Thursday, the FBI declared the investigation had been federalized, with Department of Homeland Security Chief Noem saying Minnesota has no jurisdiction in the case. The Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, that's the state police of Minnesota, now saying they are being prevented from participating in the inquiry. Do you trust Kash Patel to conduct an honest investigation? Superintendent Drew Evans, he's head of the state police for Minnesota, stated the investigation would now be led solely by the FBI, and the BCA, Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, would no longer have access to the case materials, scene evidence, or investigative interviews necessary to complete a thorough and independent investigation. Do you trust the FBI? This now marks the 9th ICE shooting by ICE agents since September, and we just had 2 shootings on Thursday. In each instance, the officer who does the firing claims to have fired out of self-defense, with later contradictory evidence proving those claims to be false. Noem, in the immediate aftermath of Wednesday's shooting, declared Good to be a domestic terrorist. You're not allowed to do that. Judges, she got into trouble with Abrego Garcia. You're tainting the jury pool. You're not allowed to call somebody a domestic terrorist. And Noem, it's by rote, they say this. She said that Good weaponized her car trying to run over an ICE agent. Noem praised the ICE agent. She said he utilized his training to defend himself and those around him. Immediately after you all saw the videos that were plastered across the internet, Donald Trump, and we all saw the videos, Donald Trump claimed that Good, a domestic terrorist, ran over the ICE agent before he killed her. I'm laughing because if you saw the videos, if you've suffered through the videos, and I'm showing you a clip, you can clearly see that ICE agent. He's firing the shots, and this is him chasing the vehicle as Good is dying after crashing into a parked car. Does this ICE officer look like he was run over and injured? Vice President J.D. Vance called the victim a deranged leftist. Vance said she tried to kill an ICE agent by trying to run him over. Florida Congressman Randy Fine, appearing on Newsmax immediately after the killing, said, "I have no sympathy for that woman." The shooting took place the morning after the Immigration Defense Network trained 100 volunteers in Minneapolis to serve as monitors of federal immigration enforcement. We need these people. We wouldn't know what really happened had it not been for all the patriotic citizens who are using their cell phones to monitor ICE. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar represents the district where the killing took place. She identified Good as a legal observer. Minneapolis's police chief, Brian O'Hara, immediately after Good was pronounced dead, said that she was not the subject of any local or federal investigation. She wasn't wanted for any crime. She wasn't believed to have been involved in any crime. In an interview with CBS News Barry Weiss's CBS News, in an interview with Barry Weiss's CBS News the day before the shooting, O'Hara spoke about ICE's crackdown on the Somali community. This is what he said. He said, "I've been concerned for weeks that because the issue is so emotional, because, frankly, some of the way this stuff has been carried out, the greatest risk to me is that there would be unrest or that there would be a tragedy. Somebody could get seriously hurt or killed because of what's happening." That is Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara talking to Barry Weiss's CBS News the day before that shooting. A visibly shaken and angry Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey held a press conference the day of the shooting. He told ICE to get the F out of our city, but he used the F word. "I won't." He said of ICE's presence, "Your stated reason for being in the city is to create some kind of safety, and you're doing exactly the opposite. People are being hurt, and now somebody is dead." And then he gave a direct order to ICE. He said, "Get the F out of Minneapolis. We don't want you here." Then, on the issue of self-defense, right? On the same day Good was killed, DHS, Department of Homeland Security, immediately said it was an act of self-defense. So Mayor Frey said they are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. Having seen the video myself, I want to tell everyone directly that that is bullshit. Boy, a lot of cursing going on. A lot of bad language. Minneapolis' City Council President Elliot Payne telling reporters ICE's presence escalates violence. ICE needs to leave. Illinois Congresswoman Robin Kelly is running for the Senate seat, now occupied by Dick Durbin. Dick Durbin retires next year. She said she's filing articles of impeachment for Department of Homeland Security Chief Kristi Noem in light of her reaction and response to Wednesday's shooting. Tricia McLaughlin is the official spokesperson for the Department of Homeland Security. Immediately after the killing, she said the ICE officer opened fire after Good, quote, weaponized her vehicle. This is what Tricia McLaughlin said. It's always the same thing. One of these violent rioters weaponized her vehicle. Were they rioting? One of these violent rioters weaponized her vehicle, attempting to run over our law enforcement officers in an attempt to kill them, an act of domestic terrorism. The shooting took place as 2,000 ICE and Border Patrol agents were conducting mass raids on Minneapolis's Somali community. The White House says the agents are there to target illegal immigration inside the Somali community and put an end to what Republicans and Fox News are now describing as widespread fraud and abuse of Minnesota's social services programs. I'll talk about that lie on a future episode. This is now, or at the time, there was 2 shootings on Thursday. This is now the 10th shooting in the past year where immigration officers fired either at a U.S. citizen or a suspected undocumented immigrant. 9 since September, as of Thursday, 11. Again, all ICE officers who discharged their weapons, they all claim they were acting out of self-defense, but later evidence always proves otherwise. Again, I'm going to show that, right? This is a mile away from where Derek Chauvin killed George Floyd in 2020. And people, you saw the videos. The right wing said Chauvin didn't kill George Floyd. This is Ms. Good's SUV veering to the right away from the ICE agent. That's the ICE agent. That's his gun. So, okay. So, I'm not going to walk you through all 10 shootings since Trump and Stephen Miller's crackdown began in 2025. But I will remind you of Marimar Martinez. We talked about her on this show. She's a 30-year-old American citizen living in Chicago. She works as a teaching assistant at a Montessori school, you know, a threat to the community. On October 4th of last year, she was shot 7 times by federal border agent Charles Exum, who claimed she had what? Weaponized her vehicle and threatened his life with it. Miraculously surviving after being shot 7 times, Martinez took herself to the hospital, and after she was released from the hospital, she was charged with impeding the work of a federal officer. That would be Exum, who fired 5 shots, creating 7 wounds. In the immediate aftermath of this shooting, Tricia McLaughlin, the spokesperson for the Department of Homeland Security, accused Martinez of being a domestic terrorist. She defended Exum, the ICE agent who fired at her, because, according to Tricia McLaughlin, the spokesperson for Department of Homeland Security, Martinez was not only aiming her car, she had not only weaponized her car. According to Tricia McLaughlin, the spokesperson for Department of Homeland Security, Martinez had weaponized a weapon. She had a semi-automatic assault rifle pointing at Exum. That's according to the Department of Homeland Security. Exum had no choice but to fire 5 shots. Created 7 wounds. I'll get to that in a second. So Martinez shot 5 times, 7 wounds. Her case was immediately thrown out of court. And guess what? When they were going over all the evidence, there was never any assault weapon, let alone an assault weapon aimed at Officer Exum. Exum claimed she was weaponizing her vehicle by driving it into his. But body cam footage later revealed that Exum swerved into her with his car, then hopped out of it, aiming his weapon and screaming, quote, "Do something, bitch," unquote. These are men, right? Firing weapons at women. You know what that's about. The next day, Exum, who fired 5 shots at this woman, texted to his fellow Border Patrol officers, quote, "I fired 5 rounds and she had 7 holes. Put that in your book, boys," unquote. I did an entire show on this. Exum was bragging that he fired 5 shots at her, but it resulted in 7 holes, since 2 of the bullets went through one extremity and out to enter another part of her body. On November 5th, during testimony, Exum admitted that, yes, I sent those texts. He explained he was a teacher. He taught weapons skills, and he was proud of his shooting. This is Martinez with a day or two after. So this guy Exum, within 24 hours of this shooting, he texted his fellow agents again. Quote, he wrote, "Cool. I'm up for another round of F around and find out. LMAO, laughing my ass off." This is F around and find out. That's what Pete Hegseth said after Maduro was captured. Within 24 hours, Exum texted his brother. These are the words, "LOL, my 15 minutes of fame." So he felt bad about firing 5 shots at a woman. Immediately after the shooting, Exum drove his van that he claimed Martinez had driven into. He drove it 1,000 miles back to Maine, where he lives, potentially damaging any evidence if Martinez was going to be charged with a crime. She wasn't. Exum has not been charged with a crime. There's no internal investigation into his shooting that day. He's still an ICE agent. What are you going to do about this, America? Don't let them control the narrative, okay? So, this is a screenshot from the shooting. Let's just go over this one last time, because remember, there are people who look at the video of George Floyd and they say Chauvin didn't kill him, okay? That is the officer pointing his weapon at Good's car at the passenger seat. She is veering away to the right, right? She's not driving the vehicle into him. He's firing 2 shots into the passenger side window, okay? Look at this, okay? That's Good's SUV, right? There's the ICE agent. There's his gun going right into through the passenger window. One of those 2 shots killed Ms. Good. That's murder. That's murder, and it's against the law. And who's to blame for all this? This guy, Donald Trump. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Thank you so much for listening to me. I hope this was helpful. Don't let them control the narrative. Okay? Thank you to Bob and Mila in the chat room for keeping the conversation sane. Leave a comment. I read all your comments. And I will try to do a show either tomorrow or the next day. It takes, I wish I could do one every night. It just takes a lot of double checking. And, I'm not first with the story. Like, this story is a day old. I don't feel like I need to be first. I just need to be thorough and make sure my facts are correct. If I made any mistakes, please let me know. Thank you.